Hello. This is episode 7.6. Looks like 8.7 is like a never ending thing of memories. Uh, so, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the memories surrounding my neighborhood and my friends in the neighborhood. So, in the neighborhood, there was a Christian family right across the street from where we lived, and they were so there was a sister and a brother, and the sister was a little older than the rest of us. So when I was 7, she was about 12, um, still younger than my brother, who was 14 at that time, but older than all of us. And her brother was 1 year older. So when I was 7, he was 8. And then just around this time, we had another family move in into an empty plot. So what they did was they didn't move in yet. There was a house getting constructed there, a bungalow, one floor bungalow. Very, very, very beautiful bungalow. Like I said in my last episode, this was a suburb of Hyderabad, and there were a lot of like houses, and uh, the track in the front was actually it was a dirt road. It was not a paved or um, uh, tarred road at all. It was literally a dirt track. And so around this age, when I was this age, and there was also a little open drainage canal. There was a cow shed next door, where a bunch of it was an empty plot there also, and there was a bunch of cows that used to be there, cows and actually not cows, buffaloes. And all their wastage material came out in a form of a drainage and started coming out. I also talked to you last time about how I uh, got my like 3 fingers injured. That was my first serious injury. And so once my second uncle, and I remember this incident so clearly, he had a scooter, he had a Vespa, and whenever he came, the one like connecting thing was he always, without fail, would make me ride in the front. There's like a little front area of the scooter. It's not like a motor bicycle where there's no area to stand. And I would always stand there, and he would give me a ride around the block and drop me. I would always look forward to him visiting because he would do that. So on one of the visits, I stood in the front, and he gave me a ride around the block. And what he would do, and maybe even he doesn't remember doing this, is gas or petrol, as in they call it in India, like was very expensive. So people would always turn off the gas when their vehicle was in idle, and they would also turn off the gas when their vehicle was coming down a slope, especially the two-wheelers, because just by the power of that, the gravity of it going down a slope, the vehicle would operate on its own. All you had to do is balance it. So he had given me a round, and our house was like little bit like downhill. It was not very steep, but it was maybe a 30-degree angle, like very kind of like a slow downward slope. So he gave me a ride on his. I was standing in the front of his vehicle, and he turned around, and as we entered the slope, he's he switched off the engine like he always did. Um, but for some reason, as we were approaching the home, I thought the vehicle had stopped, but it hadn't stopped. It was still going at a very slow pace. And I got off it. Uh, of course, I lost my balance because I actually got off a moving vehicle. And that I fell right into that drainage of all the where the wastage, the buffalo dung used to flow out from this shed. So I was covered in like this cow dung or buffalo dung from head to foot. And it was like the most horrible experience that I remember and the memory. And I had to immediately go, and my mother and my Bama, my grandma, gave me a head bath from top to toe. So the other accident I remember, and this is not really an accident, but things like this kids used to get into. The other thing I remember is uh, my mom used to have this, like I said, this pink mirror wardrobe. She had that for the longest pink decollum it was covered in. It was a dressing table, is what they used to call these things in India. So she would have this Lakme mascara, and I think everybody in the 70s in India used to have this. I don't think they use it anymore. It was like a cake kind of thing. You put a few drops of water in it and kind of made it a liquid, and then you would take the mascara, and it was an eyeliner actually, eyeliner pencil, and you would put it. So whenever this thing was free, I'd be so fascinated. I would be looking at her like this, and I would experiment with all of this. And once I used to often take this mascara and wear it myself. And I was 7, and I thought I saw a nail color sitting there. And I always disliked the color black. It seemed not vibrant to me. So I was wondering why all these grown-ups use all these like black mascara, black eyeliner. It was such an ugly color in my mind in terms of being dull, and there was no vibrancy to it. It was not like red or pink or something like that. So right next to the black eyeliner, there was her pink nail polish sitting there. And I thought I'd invented in my head the next best thing to sliced bread. I thought, wonder why nobody ever thought of it before. Why don't they use this nail color as eyeliner and put like different colors? Interestingly, these days you do have different color eyeliners, purple and pink, and you have all these. In fact, I wear purple eyeliner, very dark purple eyeliner. It looks like black, but that's what I wear. It's not really black. So, anyways, coming back to the point, I thought, why don't I put this pink eyeliner? And I actually took the pink nail color and I put it in my like an eyeliner. I just barely put it. I blinked because it was disturbing, and I started screaming. It was burning. It was burning so much because obviously it's chemical. It's like putting acid or something in your eye. My mom rushed out, and they summoned an auto. And by that time, my Kiran Moya was already in medical school. He was in his final year medical school, I think. So they rushed me there, and he took some cotton and cleaned it, and it became okay eventually. But it was so scary. So we used to do these crazy things, and when we look back, these are all such safety and security hazardous things to do that we as kids do. Once I already also, and this was more when I was 5, and my pinny reminded me of it. I took a flower and I started sniffing it, and I wanted to see how much of it I could sniff, and I kept putting it up and up and up down my up my nose, and suddenly it went in here and it got stuck and it wouldn't come out, and then they had to rush me to the doctor. This was more when I was younger, when I was 5. Um, I used to see people. We didn't have in India. We didn't have earbuds, like the Johnson and Johnson's earbuds. Those came later. Now we have those. But back then, we didn't have those. My aunts and uncles used to get those from the U.S. But in India, we didn't have those. So what they used to do is they used to take a matchstick and twirl a cotton around it, and that became an earbud. So my Amama, this was her favorite activity. She would always, many times when the ear was filled with wax, she would twirl this cotton around it and put it. And once when she was not looking, and again this was more when I was 5, uh, took a, I wanted to see how far down like that matchstick would go. There was no cotton around it, and I started stuffing it, and then I brought it out. Then I cut it into like all that matchstick into tiny bits, little bits, and I put them all down my ear. And again, that was again an emergency, and they had to rush me to the doctor again. There was a doctor called P.D. Naidu. He lived in a home called 2MIGH, and this was more again when I was 5. And then he had to, take them all out. So there was like so many hazards all around the corner. So coming to the hazards, like there was one incident that I'll never forget, because this was the first time that I actually got like slapped. I would say, I don't even call it hit or beaten. This was the first time I got my dad like gave me a it was not a beating. He beat me once. He slapped me. But my parents, like I said, there was only like 3 instances in my life. And this was the very first time, and I was already 7. So imagine, like in India, it was quite a rarity. Like parent would slap around their kids like whenever they wanted. But my parents, like I said, they never even so much as tapped me. I want to talk about the incident that got me slapped. So we had these neighbors, and then there were neighbors on the side. There were 3 people. There was one kid called Kumar. I talked about him. He was my best friend. And then there was a kid called Jyoti, and there was another kid called Shailu. Kumar, Jyoti, and Shailu were all 1 year younger than me. Our neighbor across the street, Arun, was 1 year older, and his sister Munni was 12 years old. So we were all a gang, and eventually we had another gang of kids who also joined us in that house that was being built. They had not moved in there yet. It was just us. So we used to play every day and all of that. Around this time, when in I think episode 5, I mentioned that, or episode 4, maybe I mentioned that for 1 year, I used to go to a Montessori school, and that didn't quite work out. So what happened was there was a rickshaw puller. I would not call it a driver. Rickshaw is like, they wheel the thing. It's not an auto rickshaw. It's just a rickshaw. Like the man used to cycle rickshaw, he used to pull. And then he had 2 kids, me and another boy, who he would pick me up at my home. And I very clearly remember that this rickshaw puller's driver's name was Salam. And he was an old man, so gentle. I remember his face even till today. He was like the gentlest rickshaw driver. He took so much care, and he absolutely knew he was never late, always on time. I never felt unsafe or alone at home, wondering if he'll show up or not. In fact, he would get concerned if we didn't come out of the building. Back then, there were no cell phones, there were no means of communication. So, reliability and safety and security, I don't even know how we went through childhood with nothing to communicate with our parents. And so the parents really trusted all these people to take care of us. Um, so he would drive us to when I was 5 years old and 6 years old. So when I switched to Sylvania Garden School, when I was 6 years old, my mom, told Salam, I'm going to pay you a little extra. Can you still take her to school and come back? So he was an older person. He was an older gentleman. Yes, and I'm calling a rickshaw puller a gentleman because, gentleman is not like wearing a suit boot. It is your demeanor, your culture. He was one of the most cultured people I've met ever. I remember that how caring and how sophisticated he was, in spite of being doing such a menial job. He used to wear this lungi, and he was very poor. Obviously, he had to pull a rickshaw for a living. He was uneducated, but he was a very caring and a very responsible person who did his job very sincerely. So he tried managing both. He tried, continuing taking the other boy to Montessori school because he hadn't switched schools, and also managing me. But then he was older, he became too much for him. And the money was not worth it because he had to leave his other job, and now he was only because schools all started at the same time, so he could either do that or the other. And he knew my mom really trusted him, and she didn't trust the other rickshaw pullers because I would be the only one in the rickshaw. So, but eventually he said, to my mom, Mem Sab, I can't do it because the other rickshaw, there are more kids, there are 2 or 3 kids, so I get more salary, and I need to at least like either you find me more people who can ride with me, or I just have to give up this job. I have to pick the other gig. So that said, my mother hired another rickshaw driver who was also reliable, but he didn't go above and beyond in his job. Okay, like if he told him to come, he would come. So what happened was, it was the last day of my school. I had received a report card, but the way schools worked was, you you did your last day of school, okay, and then there would be the way my Sylvania Garden School was they used to do the corrections right away. It didn't happen in other schools like that. You received your report card like a month later, but here it was not like that. You received your report card immediately after the last day of your exams, the next day. So the next day you went to school just to take your report card. So on the last day of school, he asked me, "Is this the last day of school?" I said, yes, and there was some miscommunication where my parents did tell him to pick me up after my dad dropped me in the morning on the way to work to receive my report card, because that day you had to go a little late, the only purpose we were going to receive. And then everybody received their report cards and awards were given. I was always a first ranker. And as expected, I got the first rank. I was first in all subjects, especially English, and also I had the first rank. So I was very excited about it. I couldn't wait to show my parents that report card. But there was some miscommunication, and my rickshaw puller never showed up. Okay, and think about it. Back in the day, I was just a 7-year-old, and there was absolutely no way of communicating with your parents or with the rickshaw. There was no cell phone. There was no, forget cell phone, even a landline. Very few people had it. So I waited and waited. There used to be a bunch of kids who used to wait there for their rickshaws. and then bunch of kids who used to go home in buses. Some kids who used to go home in cars. The cars kids left first, and then all the bus kids left, and then the rickshaw kids were there. Initially, um, there was you know 20, 23 people, kids sitting there under a tree waiting for their rickshaws, because many rickshaws were already parked there. They all left. Then that number quickly dwindled down within minutes to about 10 kids, and after about 15 minutes there was only literally four kids left. I started getting panicky and scared, because if these four kids leave, and I was one of the four, if the other three kids leave, uh, it it would be just me, and there was no way to communicate that. And this is in the afternoon. The school grounds had like closed. There was nobody there. I had no way of communicating with my parents. So I had an interesting conversation that I want to talk about at the time I was waiting. I remember this girl's name. She was a fifth grader. She looked very big to me. She seemed to know everything. Her name was Latifa, and we just started conversing. This was the first social interaction I had with kids outside of my neighborhood, that gang that I talked about, and outside of my class. I was pretty interactive with my classmates. It was a big deal for me that Latifa was talking to me. She seemed like big. A fifth grader is like a senior, like they look so big. And so she just started asking me questions, what I like to do, and this and that. Then she asked me a very interesting question. She asked me, "What religion are you? What is your religion?" And believe it or not, and full credit to my liberal and progressive parents, they had not taught me the word religion or the concept of religion. And the school I chose, very progressive school, the school hadn't reached that chapter as yet, I think, in social studies, or where we talked about religion. So I had no clue, and this is pretty commendable for a kid. By the time you're 7, I think kids these days know. I had no clue that there was anything called religion. I heard that word for the very first time. I wanted to impress this girl, but I didn't know how to answer that question, because I had no clue what she was asking me. So I said, "What is religion?" I mean, I had to ask her. And I felt so bad for asking her, because I knew I was showing my ignorance or stupidity. I didn't know what the word religion meant. So she said, "Oh, and so she said in Hindi. I mean, we used to converse in Hindi outside of class in that school. She said, "Oh, like, are you Hindu, Muslim, or Christian? What religion are you?" And I did not recognize the word Hindu. It was the very first time I was hearing this word in my life. I did not recognize the word Muslim either. It was the very first time I was hearing this word. But I did recognize the word Christian, and the only reason I recognized it is the Christian family across the street. During Christmas, they would put up a star outside their home. It was so fascinating, and that star always fascinated me. That became my object of desire number 2, to celebrate Christmas, because it was so fascinating. They would call me over the previous night. We would make donuts and cookies at home. I would help them. And I would also help them decorate their Christmas tree. And I would also, I was fascinated with the concept of celebrating Christmas. Absolutely fascinated. So I came home to my dad and mom and asked me, like, why can't we have a star? Why don't we celebrate Christmas? So they said, oh, they celebrate Christmas because they're Christian. And if you want to have a, you know, tree, we can get it, we can do that. But I kind of knew that they were something we were not. I didn't know what we were, but I knew they were Christian. So I recognized this word Christian, and when she said, are you Hindu, Muslim, or Christian? I was like, okay, I know we are not Christian because that's that family across the street, and we don't celebrate Christmas. So I definitely knew we were not Christian. So that was ruled out. Now it's very difficult to answer whether I was Hindu or I was Muslim. I had no clue. And I didn't want to ask another stupid question because I was already feeling stupid for asking her what is religion, and she gave me an example. So I did some logic in my head, and I knew that there were people who spoke Hindi or Urdu at home, outside of school, and I knew that we spoke Telugu outside of home, like my grandparents, and we spoke English too, but we spoke Telugu, and we did not speak Hindi outside of home. So I did the logic in my head, and I said, okay, the people who speak Hindi, and I did not know of existence of word Urdu back then. It was all the same. Urdu is very similar to Hindi, and it's literally the same. So I said, there's people who speak Hindi, and I knew it was not me. Some of my neighbors spoke Hindi. So I said, they must be Hindu because they speak Hindi. And I don't speak Hindi. So logically, I knew I was not Christian for sure. I logically derived that I was not Hindu either. So I said, oh, we are Muslim. And she immediately pitched me and said, oh, same pinch, I am Muslim too. So then I realized that I needed this question answered. So anyways, after that conversation, I remember this conversation because I was also there was the feeling of security that we were connecting. Then this girl's rickshaw came, and she and her brother sat in the rickshaw and went away. And there was just this one other kid and me. So the one other kid said, well, I'm just going to walk home because my home is not very far. So what would you want to do? I had no choice. My heart literally sank. It was the most scary thing for a child to be just, it was only 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I knew my parents wouldn't come home until 5 p.m. There was no way of contacting anybody, and the school was empty. The grounds were empty. The principal's house was there somewhere on the thing, but they were on vacation. There was absolutely nobody. So I said, okay, the only thing I can do is attempt to walk. I was also very excited to show them my report card because I got my first rank. So I said, okay, I'll walk with you. And I also remember this girl's name very well. So we walked together, and her home literally was like within halfway distance between, not even halfway, a third. It was very close. But she at least got me started. I got the concept of how to cross a road, and then I finally reached their home. Her dad owned a store. He was a metal worker. And he was not a metal worker, he was owner of a metal store who had metal workers. So, and her home was right next to it. She reached the home. Her name was Kaniz. She reached that home, and then she said, okay, I'm here. Like, what will you do now? And there was nobody at her home either. And there was no concept of, people, like I said, people didn't own cars and scooters, things like that. So there was no uncle dropping you off, So Very few people had owned cars. My dad was one of them. And her parents were not home. It was just her and me. Then that uncle came out. No, uncle was not there, but one of the metal workers came out, and he was like, "Okay, where is your home?" I told him Medipatnam. He said, "Oh, that's quite a ways away, but are you comfortable walking?" I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll walk." And then he said, "No matter what happens, don't take a ride from any stranger and try to cross as few roads as possible. Good luck." Okay. So I embarked on this journey to walk home, and the home was pretty far for a 7-year-old. So I started walking home, and in the beginning it was scary. I did have to cross 2 streets. It was very, very scary to cross. I didn't know when to cross. Um, I had never crossed a street on my own. I always had an adult with me. Such a big street where I used to play on the street all the time, but we are talking like large streets with cars and lorries and trucks and whizzing past by. So I didn't have experience, so I experienced that. And then strangely, I felt a surge of excitement, independence. I'd never felt so happy before. I really thought I couldn't do it. And then I made it all the way home. And my Bama received me. I was very thrilled at my 2 achievements that day when my parents came. I told them about number one, that I got first rank in the class, and number two, I walked home all alone. My parents were very, very proud of me, and then my mom and dad said, my mom actually said, maybe you can just do it from, you can just walk home. Don't need to rely on the rickshaw next time. Don't stay alone. If the rickshaw doesn't come, just do this thing and walk home. And I often walked home. It was my favorite part of my day. And I still haven't come to the time I got slapped. I'll come to that. I'm going way over, but I have to finish that, I think. Otherwise, it'll be disconnected. So, anyways, I found this. There was this newfound brave, independent soul in this 7-year-old. So I thought, oh, now I could do anything. I could go anywhere independently. So, anyways, this Jyoti and Shailu, even though they're younger than me, this Jyoti was a big bully, but she kind of just took over and just bossed over us. Not a bully, but she was very bossy. So me and Shailu had these tricycles, okay, and Jyoti did not really have a tricycle. And then she pestered and pestered and pestered her parents, and they finally bought her one. So this was the first day of the tricycle, and then she decided that she'll be the leader of the tricycle gang. And she and Shailu never wore, and as atrocious as this sounds, they used to just go around in a little underwear. They did not wear any clothes on the top. I don't know how their parents left them like that, but they did. So she would. She used to once took us saying that I know this place where we can capture fish. So we went to the end of the street all alone, and she said, all you need is a bottle. And then we took bottles, and there was this pond, this stream, and then she showed us, look, these are all fish. And then all you have to do is take a piece of bread, put it, and all the fish will come to it, and then you take a bottle and capture it. So we caught all this, we went fishing, and we would regularly do this. And then I said, and we would capture them and leave them. And then I thought, why don't I, grow the fish at home? So I captured all these little tiny fish, and I got them home. And I put them and she said, don't put them in the sunlight, put them in this windowsill and feed them bread every day. So I put them in the windowsill and keep disappearing to feed them bread. And my mom followed me one day. And it was not 2 minutes, not one day. Like I only had it for a day. And next day my mom like followed me, and then she saw those and she was horrified. She's like, these are not fish, these are all tadpoles. They're not fish at all. So, but anyway, those all died because I was like, they're not really meant to survive with what we were feeding them. So that, and then she, Jyoti one day said, we all have tricycles now. Why don't we kind of go to the market, which was literally, it was a long way away. It was a good 2 miles away, and it was like 6 blocks away. And they didn't really, Jyoti and Shiloh didn't really have like any clothes on except their underwear. And we were only 7. So there was, so interestingly, there was in the neighborhood, so I'll come down to this. So I was initially kicked about the idea. She didn't tell us that she was in. Actually, I take it back. She didn't tell us that we would go to the market. She said, "Let's just drive to the end of the block where the fish are." So we walked there many times. So I said, "Yeah, sure." So we rode to the end of the block. And then she goes, "Why don't we explore the next block?" I wanted to say no. I was not comfortable at all. I was 7, but I didn't realize I was such a pushover, which I still am in many ways. So I couldn't say no to her. And we drove to the next block. And then the next. 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 Every time she'd keep saying, let's drive one more block. And we kept going and going and going and going. And before we knew, we had ridden on those bicycles with these 2 girls wearing nothing but their like underwear. And we were only 7. There was no supervision. We had ridden a good hour and a half. We left homes around 4. It was 6:30 or like, 6 p.m. ish, 6:30 p.m. ish, 6 p.m. ish. And we were in the market. There were cars and everything whizzing around, people, strangers, like staring at us. And we realized then, I finally, like, I was almost in tears. I said, Jyoti, I want to go home. My parents will be worried. I couldn't say no. Every block that we drove, I wanted to say no, but I couldn't say no. It was so much peer pressure, and this girl was so strong and so bossy. I knew that I didn't know how to get out of the situation. I hated every moment of it. I wasn't enjoying the ride. I wasn't enjoying with cars whizzing past by. I was scared for my life. I was scared about all these strangers giving us looks. I was scared about being kidnapped because I'd seen that in movies. It didn't feel adventurous. It wasn't fun. It was also very tiring. My legs started hurting. And I didn't think I could ride all the way back home. If I had the energy to do that, I was little. And I finally said, Jyoti, let's drive back home. And then that's when Jyoti told us that she didn't really know the way back home. We were completely lost. At some point when we were riding to the market, we actually met my youngest auntie, my Pinnis cousin, Janaki, in the market. And I said, oh, I know this auntie, and I was hoping she would just tell us the way back home. But then Jyoti didn't want, any adult supervision. So she said, oh, just tell her that our parents are like, come here and they're just around the corner shopping for vegetables. So we lied that we were our parents were just shopping for vegetables. And because the Janaki my auntie's friend asked me, what are you guys doing here? Because we were literally like 2 miles away from home. And it was a bizarre scene that there were three little kids, so far away from home. It was not like we were playing on the street. Um, so we just lied, and I didn't want to lie. This was our last hope. It was dark. By now it was dark. It was getting very dark. Not pitch dark yet, but it was dusk. And when we saw Janaki, auntie, my heart jumped, and I was wished that she would just rescue us. She was a known figure. She was my aunt's good friend. I knew who she was. I knew her family. And I thought if you could just ask for help, this auntie would just take us home. But Jyoti just made us lie. And she just said, oh, just tell her that we are here with our parents. And after we said that, that auntie went away. And there was nobody. Like, it was so dark, and then it was became dark. This was around like 6:30 p.m. And we had been out for 2.5 hours, and when that Janaki auntie went away, we lost all hope. Then we ran into this person. Back in the day, we used to get our flour milled. We didn't get refined flour in the market. We would take all the grains to a flour mill, and the person would mill it. So this person, my parents would frequently take him there, and he was always covered from top to bottom in flour. He was like white because he used to work in the flour mill. So I recognized him. He was in the market, and I knew I could ask him for help because Jyoti's family, I know, didn't go to the flour mill. They were not, again, only like the wealthy people went to the flour mill. And the other kind of middle class people just milled it themselves. They had like they had this stone mill that they used to use. But anyways, so I said, all I have to do is pass by him and he'll notice me and he did. We all passed by him, and he goes, wait. Aren't you so-and-so's daughter? So I said, yes. What are you doing here? Then I said, we are lost. And then back in the day, everybody knew everybody, like they were so nice. And then he said, oh, you can't. And Jyoti said, oh, we'll manage. Then he said, no, you can't. Like, I'll take you home. And he said, your parents must be looking for you. And I think they are looking for you. They came past my mill, so I'll take you home. Again, there were no cell phones, nothing. So he led us home. And when we entered our home, we entered the street. All Jyoti's parents, Shailu's parents, my parents, they were frantically running up and down the street. So they found us, and they literally took us, all went. Jyoti's mom lost it. She started beating her on the street itself, like hitting her. Shailu's dad lost it, and he pulled her off the thing, and he started beating her. My parents hugged me, but I think they found it strange that they felt, for the first time, I think they felt maybe we are not doing the right thing by disciplining the kid. So my amama was also there, but my dad was sensitive enough that he didn't want me insulted in front of everybody. He didn't beat me in front of everybody. Then they took me home. And then the funniest, most bizarre, one of the bizarre incident, funny in a way, a very funny thing happened. So my parents had never disciplined anybody. At least maybe they disciplined my brother. I don't think so. They definitely didn't discipline me. My sister was not born yet. I was never punished in my life. And I didn't do anything that deserved punishment also. Like I told you, I was a very goody, perfect child. I really was a first ranker. I listened to everything that people said. I never said no. So there was nothing to punish also. But it was strange that they also did not know exactly how to punish a child. They'd never done it in their life. So it was a learning experience for them too. But they just saw the other parents and they felt maybe they doubted themselves. Maybe we should discipline her. Maybe we cannot just let her get away with this. I never got a chance to tell them that I did this all against my will. I hated the whole experience. I was bullied by Jyoti. But, anyways, so the funny thing that happened was they had a prolonged discussion on the side, but it was a small house, so I could hear everything, whether they should discipline me or not. So there was like 15-minute prolonged discussion between my my dad, my mom, and my amama, where they were like deciding whether to discipline me or not. And then after that 15-minute prolonged discussion, there was another 15-minute prolonged discussion on what the method of discipline should be. People said, oh, maybe we should not give her dinner. Somebody said that. And then they said, no, she doesn't, like my mother said, no, she doesn't eat already. Like she'll be happily skip dinner. She won't learn that. And then my dad said, no, I'll give her a whack, and my dad had never even so much as, tapped me on the shoulder. And then my amama, I remembered, then she was like, please don't punish her that way. My amama was so nice. She literally said, no, please don't do it. So then there was like that. They were all feeling so guilty and discussing and collaborating on how to punish a child. It was the cutest thing ever that I've seen in my life, that a parent doesn't feel so uncomfortable disciplining a child. And then my mother said, yeah, I think we should whack her, we should slap her one, but let's determine which part of the body we should slap her on. and then my mom said, let's slap her on the butt because it's soft and she won't get injured. Because they don't touch the head, like stay away from the head. And again, this is like literally so funny to me when as I say this, because I remember this. And then I think my mom herself said, oh, no, we can't do that because she's a young girl. She may feel awkward if her father, whacks her on the butt, she's not so little, she may feel awkward. She might feel embarrassed. Then they decided, oh, you can't touch the face because she might get injured. I was a very delicate child. Even if you so much as touched me, I would maybe turn red, get bruised, So you can't touch the face, you can't touch the head. My mom was very, very particular about not hitting anybody on the head, very particular. They finally decided that, okay, my dad will slap me on the thigh, Then they were discussing, oh, but what if she falls off balance and hits herself? Then it was decided. Then my amama said to my dad, oh, she might fall off balance. Maybe somebody should hold her. And my mama said, no, I don't want to hold her. Then she'll think that I participated in this. So then they decided that my dad will sit on there was a little telephone thing there, where we put our telephone on the telephone stand and a little seat. My dad will sit on the chair next to the telephone stand or sit on the telephone seat for support. And then he will put me in his lap, and then so that I don't fall off, and then he will give me one slap on my thigh and no more than one. This was the consensus. I think it took them literally 30 minutes to decide on this. And I can tell you the whole impact of it was gone by the time they did it. So my dad put me on his lap, and then he gave me a big, not even a big one, a whack on the thigh. He beat me once, slapped me once on the thigh. And he said, never do this again. promise you'll never do this again. I promise. So that's what happened. But what what I wish my parents did was, I wish they actually, instead of punishing me because that bore no fruit, I wish they asked me, and again, they were doing it for the first time. I don't blame them or anything. I wish they asked me if I did it willingly, and I wish they actually taught me how to say no. Because what got me into trouble is not any sense of defiance. I just did not know how to say no to Jyoti. I didn't even enjoy this experience. I hated every minute of it. Um, and uh, and never learned, like even as a grown up, to say no for a very long age. So sometimes you can get yourself, the lesson from this is sometimes, you can get yourself into pretty scary situations uh, if uh, if you yield to peer pressure on any pressure. So very important skill for every person to learn is how to say no if something is being done to them or asked of them against their will. Simple lesson, I know you've heard it several times, but it's a skill that many, even forget children, many adults also don't know. So that's the lesson. So I went like 1 hour. So I hope you guys have the patience to listen to this. And then we'll speak about, probably get back onto episode 8 after this. Thanks for listening.